To the currency markets right now because the euro slipping below a key technical support level, again on concerns about Greece and austerity and debt, you name it, or maybe it's just dollar strength, right? Because the dollar has actually done reasonably well the last couple of days and weeks. But will this slide continue for the euro, or is there a relief rally? Joining us now via telepresence is Praefimium Partners, Alpesh Patel, and GFT Forex's Boris Schlossberg. Alpesh, to you first. Is this just a temporary correction in euro-dollar or the start of more meaningful dollar strength?
It's definitely not the start of more dollar strength, whether against the euro or other currencies. The dollar is fundamentally overvalued, certainly even against the euro, other than this short-term blip around what is essentially a microeconomy, Greece, when it comes to the rest of the major European economies, and the dollar will continue on a downward trend for the rest of the year.
Can I just jump in there? Fundamentally overvalued, particularly against the euro. Overvalued by how much? What percentage would you give it?
Roughly about 20%. There's a number of metrics on this. The purchasing power parity, for instance, is one good measure to determine longer-term, more fundamental overvaluation, and that's one of the key factors that I'm looking at for this.
Boris, do you agree or disagree with that the dollar is still fundamentally overvalued, perhaps by as much as 20%?
I don't know. You know, I trade speculative markets. Speculative markets move on sentiment, and sentiment right now is obviously against the euro because everybody's eyes are peeled to Greece. And it's really today the story is very much a story of triumph of politics over economics. We had relatively good data out of Europe, but it got shrugged off as soon as everybody started to fear the prospect of a possible rejection of the austerity measures in the Greek parliament. We're now only at +3 for the Papandreou government as far as the positive spread. And the market is very jittery and afraid that over the weekend, if they get more political pressure, there may be more deputies that will defect. And that's really what's keeping the downward pressure on the euro.
Well, Pesh, listen, going back to your idea about the dollar, what does it take to make a good currency then? Because when you look at the problems of Europe as a whole, we got a lot of problems too. But it seems that we're at least ahead of them in getting our problems resolved. I have no idea then what would make a strong currency.
Well, at the moment, you don't necessarily want a strong currency. You certainly want to be boosting those exports. And given the demand out of China and India and the suffering that companies have had over the last few years, you don't necessarily want a strong currency at all. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. And certainly when you've got a massive current account deficit, that's not going to make a strong currency. If you want to know what makes a strong currency, look at the Chinese currency. What it is something which doesn't have a massive current account deficit. They've got the ability to export. But I say the strong currency is not the problem. The problem with the euro, returning to that issue, is that the IMF and the Germans and the European Central Bank have actually made a terrible decision today by essentially writing a blank check to the Greeks. The Greeks will, of course, pass these austerity measures because it's been made clear to them they don't actually really need to do anything about them because they've been given this blank check that they will not be allowed to default.
I would also like to know, Boris, to what extent the Chinese will always backstop the euro. I mean, any opportunity they can to diversify out of dollars and further into euros, I would imagine they're looking at what's happening with the euro and thinking it's fallen to a record low against the Swiss franc, falling against the dollar. Maybe it's time to load up.
I think it is true. And Chinese want to prop up the euro not only for economic reasons, but for political ones as well. They do not want hegemony of the dollar. They want to be able to have two viable currencies across the world. And they want to give cede the power back to the dollar. So they very much have an interest to prop up the euro. And in fact, that's the trade in the euro, is that China acts as the white knight to Greece in some way or form. But I think they may be waiting to see if the euro pierces the 140 level before they come in and step in and start to really bargain hunt on the currency.
All right, wither the U.S. dollar. Oh, boy. Alpesh Patel and Boris Schlossberg, thank you.